Good evening, everyone. This is the time and place for a City Council meeting. It's Tuesday, September 4th, 2018. We'll start first with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Solomon. Modrick. Nordstrom. Drew. Scott. Drury. Laurenti. Roberts. Armstrong. Lewis. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Tonight, in place of an invocation, we'll have a few moments of silence for our servicemen and women, and also for our first responders in our communities who sacrifice, sometimes ultimately, for the cause. And when we're done with that, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance. So join me, please. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, now we're going to adopt an agenda. This is a time when the council can adopt the agenda as written or can make some alterations to it. Is there a motion? Pardon me? Solomon, move to adopt. Drew, second. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. And now we're going to be down in front for an hour or two for some recognition and awards. So. Craig, you want to come on up? It's a great honor to be able to recognize long-term employees, those that have stood the test of time and performed some service for, Craig Baltzer. I apologize. Anyway, it's an honor, and tonight we have several of them, and there will be a few comments about each of them, and so I want you to just, as they come up, look at these people and understand that they've given at the very least 20 years of their life, and to one person 30 years. And so I'm going to turn it over now to Civic Center Director Craig Baltzer to introduce the first one. Sandra Arnold.
Please come up, Sandra. If you want to bring your family, bring them up too? No? Okay. Sandra Arnold's been with the Civic Center for 20 years worth of service. I have only had the pleasure of working with Sandra for the last 3 years and 10 months. That's as long as I've been at the Civic Center. So I don't have any of those cute stories from way back when she first started at the Civic Center. But I can tell you this. Sandra's position with us is administrative assistant. And if that conjures in your mind what that position is, let me tell you this. She also has a degree in marketing, a degree in accounting, and she is extremely organized, and she is probably one of our best historians at the Civic Center. She's our catch-all. She moves from one department to the other wherever we need the help. Without her, we probably would need to add another staff member in every department. She's much more than administrative assistant, and I want to thank her for the 3 years and 10 months that I've worked with her, and on behalf of the entire Civic Center, for all the years of service. Thank you.
And we'll call on Rapid City Police Chief Carl Jageris, who's going to introduce about half of the RCPD here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a very exciting night for the Rapid City Police Department, actually an exciting month, the month of September. We will be celebrating 150 years of service amongst 7 different employees. So first off, we're going to start with 6 employees, one at a time, that each have 20 years of service. And what I want to tell you about that is I happen to be talking to former Mayor Barnett today, for those of you that have been here for a long time. And I was telling him what was going on tonight at the council meeting, and he said, that is exactly what we were trying to accomplish when Tommy Hennies, our former police chief, for those of you that have been around for a long time, really pushed for more professionalism regarding education, degrees, military experience, and otherwise within our organization, is that, that our supervision ranks would be from within our organization, and that our management team, supervision team would reflect our community very closely. So he was very excited. I want to start with Jeff Alexander as one of our sergeants. Jeff, would you come up? So Jeff started with us 20 years ago. He has a bachelor's degree in criminal justice from Ferris State University in Michigan. And over the last 20 years, he's been doing a lot of different things, including being a patrol officer, a police training officer, training other new officers, a member of our special response team, one of our emergency driving instructors, and in 2010 he went to investigations and was a detective for a little bit, and in 2011 became a senior officer, and in 2014 he's became a sergeant. And so he is responsible for the operational portion of our officers that are on the streets each day. And so I want to congratulate Jeff on 20 years of service. All right, and we want to acknowledge his family who has supported him for the last 20 years as well. Thank you for being here. Next up is Sergeant Craig Casson. Sergeant Casson came to the Rapid City Police Department with a bachelor's degree from South Dakota State University, where as a college student, he was an All-American athlete. I'll tell you that when he came to us 20 years ago, he ran 1.5 miles in 7 minutes and 32 seconds, which is amazing, and that's why he was an All-American college athlete. And I will tell you that just earlier this year, during our annual PT testing, because we test all of our staff once a year, his 1.5 mile run was 9 minutes and 11 seconds. So we're talking about a 6-minute mile here for 1.5 miles, and I'll tell you he has used that on the streets in many foot pursuits. So he has worked primarily patrol his entire career, and for the last several years has been a sergeant assigned to our patrol division. And one of his most recent accomplishments is he was a major part of doing an overhaul of our police training process for all of our new recruits. So congratulations, Sergeant Casson.
And just for the record, I could run that fast if I wanted to. I just don't want to.
Okay, next up, Lieutenant Eli Diaz. Lieutenant Diaz grew up in Rapid City, and he has received a bachelor's degree in biblical studies in 1994 prior to coming to the department. He's worked several years in patrol as a patrol officer, worked specifically as a traffic enforcement officer, a patrol sergeant, and in 2005, he was the supervisor of our evidence facility. So he's in charge of the crime lab and the crime scene response. And during that time, he was promoted to lieutenant in 2012 and then served for a few years as our accreditation manager. So he's made his way around the department, certainly. While employed at the department, he has taken it upon himself to get a master's degree, Master's of Divinity, and then most recently, earlier this year, received a doctorate degree. So we have Dr. Diaz and Lieutenant Diaz here. So thank you for your service. Yeah, when I told Mayor Barnett that we had several PhDs or doctorate degrees on our command staff, he was utterly amazed. So it's a lot of hard work. Okay, did Officer Doyle make it yet? There he is. I understand that he just came from a call. He was tied up, was maybe not going to be here, but our work goes on even when there's meetings, and at our department we're used to being flexible. So Sean, if you would come up. Officer Doyle is one of our K-9 officers. He graduated from Montana Law Enforcement Academy in 1997 and worked about 12 years as a patrol officer, and then in 2010 he became a K-9 officer. And he's continued to serve in that role ever since, has been involved in many, many major incidents that were resolved with that important tool in our department. He's also a state acknowledged, recognized K-9 instructor for detection and patrol functions, so he has essentially made a name for himself as a K-9 handler. So congratulations, Sean. We have family members of everybody that's been up, including Sean's family I saw here, so thank you for your support. Next up, Kyle Fees, Sergeant Kyle Fees. Sergeant Fees also grew up in Rapid City as a Central High School graduate. He served in the United States Navy for 10.5 years. That wasn't enough, so he went to the U.S. Army for 2 years, and then became a patrol officer at our department. After that, he spent 8 years as a detective in our investigations division, and for the last several years, he has been a sergeant, having oversight of our patrol shifts. So, again, thank you for your service. All right, next up, Sergeant Marcos Glass. Marcos, come up, please. Marcos came to us from the Air Force after he served 4 years and spent several years as a patrol officer, became a detective, spent some time in our evidence division, and was one of the founders of our Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force, something that unfortunately is a necessity in today's world, but he was on the front end of that effort. In 2013, he became a K-9 officer, and just recently he was promoted to sergeant. He will be retiring his dog Jackson at the end of this month, so he's got a few more weeks of playing K-9 officer, and then he transitions to patrol supervisor. So congratulations and thank you for your service. We are having a retirement party at the end of the month for Jackson for his service. So, all right, next up, Terry Reiner. We'd like to recognize Terry for 30 years of service with the Rapid City Police Department. And I'll just ask, was it Chief Hennies that hired you, or did you predate that? Hennies. Okay, Chief Hennies also hired you. Terry has worked as a clerk as her position, and then more recently as a police service technician. But she does a lot of behind-the-scenes work to make sure that we're organized and efficient and effective in the work that we do. She grew up in Rapid City, attended Central High School, and for the last several years, she has been responsible to support our accreditation effort, which is a very detail-oriented work, and she has performed extremely well, so we appreciate her service very much. Congratulations. Okay, so we would like to do one more group photo. Terry, if you could come back up, and everyone else that was recognized, please come back up. Okay.
Well, those 6 police officers with 20 years of service were hired as part of a group of 16. There were 8 regular openings at the time, and the city took advantage of one of the first community-oriented policing services hiring grants, which allowed for 8 additional positions. It was the federal government's way to assist local communities in beefing up their police resources. So 6 remaining of 16 in 20 years. That's really a pretty good retention rate. The job has a way of making you become interested in other things sometimes. So now, on to general public comment. This is a time for members of the public to discuss or express concerns to the council on any issue not on the agenda. Action will not be taken at this meeting on any issue not on the agenda except by placement on the agenda by unanimous vote of the council members present. So when you get up to the podium tonight, there's a 3-minute timer for everyone. And if you look at these lights right over here, it's green, yellow, and red. So first, Terry Sporer.
I'm Terry Sporer, lived in Rapid City since 1969, and we got to do something about the town. They paint the downtown first. They forget about the streets out. We got to get something done. Can't do it right, we'll get somebody to do it. Thank you and have a great day. Bye.
Thank you. Next we have Chuck Henry.
It's been a while since I've been up here. I've sat down with Craig from the Civic Center and that, and I'm looking at doing a citywide talent show. We've got the dates picked, but I'm not going to announce them or where it's going to happen yet. We're looking all over the city for talent, along with the surrounding areas. So that's something to look forward to the future. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Tina Mullally. Tina or Dan Mullally? Oh, or both?
Obviously, I'm Dan. I wanted to talk about the shooting in North Rapid on August 14th. The victim was a 43-year-old. His name was Nathan Graham. He was shot in the back of the head by a 14-year-old on drugs. According to the family, Nathan was trying to mentor a 14 and a 16-year-old. Eventually, when he saw the bad influence they were having on his stepson, he confronted them and told them to stay away. They returned with a gun. One of our tenants heard the shots, and the person who was on the phone also heard the shots. A neighbor I talked to heard the shots, saw a car outside his window. Neither they nor we were contacted the police. There is a GoFundMe page designed to assist his widow with the transporting of Nathan's body back to Pennsylvania. There are also local donation sites. My wife and I have 3 duplexes in North Rapid and like to think we're performing a good service to the community. We've been there 8 years. I've always known there was a crime problem, but it really hit home after Nathan's murder when I was in front of one of our units with a power washer, washing away the blood, cleaning up the crime scene. A basic search on the internet reveals the extent of the problem. On Neighborhood Scout site, quote, with a crime rate of 47 per 1,000 residents, Rapid City has one of the highest crime rates in America compared to all communities of all sizes. From the smallest towns to the very largest cities, one's chance of becoming a victim of either violent or property crime here is 1 in 21. Within South Dakota, more than 98% of the communities have a lower crime rate than Rapid City. And even if we count this incident as isolated, North Rapid has a crime problem that needs to be addressed, and the police have a PR problem. 2 of our tenants have had their car windows broken out. One refused to report it, so I did it on my own. When I talk to our tenants about the need to report this vandalism, I get the same response. What's the point? They never do anything. Aside from the human toll, there is an economic effect. If crime can be reduced, property values will rise, Rapid City will receive more in tax revenue. It's a win-win situation. If it's a matter of money, the city needs to prioritize things differently, and law enforcement in North Rapid needs to be moved up on the list. I don't know the answers, but things don't seem to be working well. I spend a lot of time on East Philadelphia. I rarely see a police officer walking around or riding a bicycle. I occasionally see them driving by. I think if the police would work with the residents there, we could maybe help solve this problem together. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Tina, anything to add?
Good evening, Councilman. Thank you for your service. It's greatly appreciated. And thank you for giving me the time and the opportunity to speak on this issue. I want you to know that we greatly appreciate our law enforcement. When I first moved to Rapid City, I applied to become a police officer. I was one in 600 or 300 that made it through the written test. I was one of 60 that made it through the physical test, and I was one of 5 that went in for an interview for 4 positions that were open at the time. My husband's father was a beat cop in St. Paul, so we greatly appreciate what the police officers in this city do. However, we're learning that sometimes the old ways are the best ways. Getting our police officers on foot in areas that crime is high, getting them to know the residents that live there. I am a member of the Neighborhood Watch program, as well as Richie is. I am also a member, I have several members around me of the Neighborhood Watch program. But for us as landlords to step out with our own power washer and wash away biohazards is not our job. And it affects us and our tenants very much so. I do understand that this was an isolated incident, but as my husband stated on the amount of crime in our city, it is very high. And I'd like to be a part of being able to help our police officers reduce that crime in North Rapid, because we are trying to do what the city council is trying to do and have affordable housing. And it's tough for us to do that when there's writings on the street and we're having to show new tenants our house. So if there is anything that we can do as landlords, anything that we can do as citizens to help our police department, we would greatly appreciate the opportunity to do so, to help reduce the crime in our city. Thank you.
Thank you. And that takes us through general public comment, and now to non-public hearing items, items 2 through 32. We have a public comment period on items 2 through 26, and that will take us to Chuck Henry for a few of these items. On items 16, 19, and 20, 16 and 19.
Okay, on 19, I hope you approve this because our fire equipment goes out 24 hours 7 responding to fire calls, medical calls, and some rescue calls. So that'd be a good fix for the fire department. Where am I? 23. Is that the one?
16, I think you're looking for.
16? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. This I hardly disagree with, giving the United Families a license to raise money for families, for their programs and that. That's just showing children that they can drink. And as United Families, we're supposed to focus on families, not destroying families. Is that it for this one?
That's it for now.
Thank you.
Okay, and that'll close the public comment period, and now we're on to deciding about the consent items, items 4 through 26. The council can vote on all of these items with one vote, or they can remove certain items from the consent calendar for individual consideration. So we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Item 24.
The 34? 24. Darla Drew.
Item 23.
Item 23. Anyone else? So then could we have a motion to approve the consent items with the exception of 23 and 24? Moved by Laurenti, second by Armstrong. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 23, approve capital plan for public works infrastructure. And we'll go to Darla Drew.
Thank you. I guess I have a question for Pauline, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Pauline, when I'm looking at the figures here, and I think you're the person that I would talk to, I see that the total spent for 2018 is around $6 million, and remaining for 2018 is $30 million on the drainage money. Can you explain that to me? Is that correct, or are those just bills we still need to pay? What, why is there $30 million remaining? Seems like we have a lot of problems with drainage, and I just want to make sure that...
Can you point me to where you're looking at so I can...
Capital plan for street drainage and MIP projects, July 31st, 2018. It was one of the attachments on this item. The remaining balance, yeah. Yep, at the very bottom.
I'm actually going to let Dale address this.
Thank
This
you.
is a report that his department puts together.
Okay.
Okay, Dale Tech.
Thank you. That's a great question. Through the course of project development, we have many large projects that we identify in the next 3 to 5 years that are going to be under construction. We make sure we have that money in hand before we even do the design work. So you'll see a project total of about $30 million sitting out there. For instance, we've recently opened bids on the East Boulevard project, and that is a multi-million dollar project that hasn't even started yet. However, we do have the money sitting there in the wings, ready to go when the contractor starts work so we can pay those bills.
I guess I understand that. I think that's very wise planning, but doesn't it make sense that some of that money might go to problems that are occurring now?
Every project on the CIP list is a problem that's occurred in the past, and that's why we're addressing those. So as far as priority is concerned, the projects identified on our 5-year CIP list are priorities.
Okay, that's fine. That's a good answer for me, but I just saw that sitting there, and I was wondering why that wasn't being spent. But obviously, it's going to bigger things in the future, right?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there a motion on 23? Motion to approve by Solomon. Second by Richie Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 24, acknowledge stormwater drainage discussion. And we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate Darla's looking into those numbers because I think we are in the search right now because we've had a rough year in our drainage. We're calling it an unusual year, but these storms, just like droughts, can come continually, so we do need to be prepared. I was fortunate enough to be on CIP and have this discussion as an open discussion about some of the areas that have been continual, they've been ongoing, they've been years mounting up, and then here we had May 18th and then again in July, and it just compounded on top of that. So the links attached are not, it's not speaking just on a property owner, it's actually speaking on behalf of the properties of the city of Rapid City. So there's these areas, and I understand with Dale that they're coming down the pike of CIP, but many of these that have been hit pretty hard this year have been there for a long time. So I hope the number is coming up, and I hope that we're going to get this drainage issue where it has built up to the point of actually doing some of our own street damages as well, and get this resolved before we have another season like we did this year. I think we have seen 12-year droughts. We can have 12-year wets. And if that happens, I think we're going to all be getting boats. But I appreciate, again, the CIP and also the council allowing this to become open discussion, to take a look at this, because at some point we all question, how do we get beyond the public telling us we have a problem? And I would hope that this will keep us top of mind awareness of some of those areas amongst them all that we need to address. Thank you.
Okay, so can we have a motion to acknowledge? Motion to acknowledge by Scott? Second. Second by Drew. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, that's the end of our consent items. Now, non-consent items 27 through 32. We'll open public comment on items 27 through 32, starting with Chuck Henry on item 27.
I do have a role on this one. I'm the advocate specialist for Black Hills Works. Me and Brad sat up, worked together on stuff, and we're looking at sealing our industrial buildings. That's out on concourse. I think he kind of sees it my way that we're trying to get more people out in the community at competitive jobs and that, and We just got extra buildings that we need to get rid of. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Dale Anderson. Same item, 27.
Thank you. My name is Dale Anderson, and I made an application to expand our school. And we have a fantastic school with some unique students, and they've been convincing their fellow students to come, and the school is now filled to capacity, and we have a waiting list. So I couldn't let that problem go unnoticed, and I was looking around for a building to expand our school, add classrooms, and look for a gymnasium, so I needed a building with high walls. I found the building with the help of Chris Long because they had it listed with Black Hills Works. And so I saw a daycare across the street, and I said, this is a no-brainer. We can move in with a school, and the problem is it's zoned light industrial, and that won't fly. So with the help of several people, I made an application for a conditional use permit and a rezoning application. We presented our proposal to planning and zoning, and we were denied. We came to the city council on appeal to ask for your help in this project. And we have had help and encouragement from Black Hills Works, and we would like to see this pass. A number of individuals have come in support of this, and people from Black Hills Works are here, and people from our church and school are here also. If they would stand up, you can see that we have had a number of individuals recommending this and giving us our support. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Janelle Fink.
Good evening. My name is Janelle Fink. I'm with Fisk Land Surveying, and I'm here on behalf of Black Hills Works and the Seventh-day Adventist Church, asking for your support on item number 27. We submitted a request for rezoning from light industrial to office commercial because there is a very narrow window that's available for appropriate zoning for a school or a parochial school. We detailed the information or outlined the information of the operations of the school in our application. I think each of you have received emails, possibly personal phone calls, and some of you have toured the facility as well to see the suitability of this building in this area for a small parochial school. Dr. Anderson mentioned their existing enrollment and their growing enrollment, but I want to assure that everybody understands that this is still a very small parochial school. Their existing enrollment is 26. Their waiting list includes 14. So it's a total of 40 people that would be served. The current Black Hills Works building is housing and serving over 120 people in a training activity. This item number 27 is also in conjunction with 37, which you will hear later on, is the conditional use permit to allow the school and the church. And we're here and available to answer any questions that you may have about the specific use or operations, but we need your support and approval today of this item 27 for the rezone, as well as item number 37 for the conditional use permit. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Janelle, do you want me to call you back for 37, or does this cover it, available for questions?
This will be fine, but if you do have questions, please ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that'll... Kyle Trelor. Almost blew you off. On item 30 and 31.
Hello, I'm Kyle Triller with KTM Design Solutions, here to speak on items 30 and 31. I'll start with item 30, and I'd like to first thank City Council for hearing this request and for Public Works Committee for some good discussion that we had on both of these items as well. With item 30 specifically, we were requesting to run sewer in an unusual alignment to help better facilitate our development and to better serve the properties in and around us. The development itself, oh, wrong one, there we go. And I think my master plan here is a little larger than I can do on this, but basically this is the Valley Park subdivision, and it's attached to a much larger 600-acre property complex that we have here. And the question was brought up on master planning and how all of this fits in and relates to the entire property. And I just want to point out that, in fact, everything from Highway 44 to the south, all the way up to East North Street, we have been planning for and accounting for with this development. And I think I can zoom in here. This is the Shepherd Hills. We've got everything from proposed medical uses, affordable housing units, potential school properties to give back to the school, a little over 1,000 housing lots, multiple acres of commercial and multifamily. And I can zoom in here up to Valley Park. Now, once again, this is the Valley Park subdivision. We have roughly 50 acres here that we have industrial and commercial uses on. The request was to extend sewer through the property. And I say was because we're going to ask to withdraw our appeal tonight, but we thought that this would be a good time to kind of give you, for those of you that aren't aware of the development, that number one, we are looking ahead, we are master planning, we are keeping in mind the needs of this entire 600 acres. With the support of the staff and Public Works, we're going to withdraw this. But we do want to point out that there are significant costs involved, even with what we're doing in off-site improvements that we are requesting. Just to bring sewer to this property, we're running from Eglin Street back across the railroad tracks and then into this property. So we're going to continue with the plans that we do have approved. We also have some dates on some closings that we have to make, and so it's just not feasible for us to continue this. We'd like to ask that this exception be withdrawn at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Now I'll just jump right into item 31.
Go ahead.
All right. Item 31, we also had some great discussion at the Public Works meeting. Once again, this is an exception that we submitted. We have Valley Drive that we're proposing 2 lots along. We have 21 feet of pavement. We have existing ditches that are currently functioning. It's a collector level street, very similar to Creek Drive, which was recently granted an exception here not too long ago. And we're in a similar situation where we would be creating a discontinuous section. We have properties on both sides of us, and when we brought the exception to staff, they directed us. Right now this is in the letter from the staff, but we're denying all of these with the idea that you will go to City Council and to come up with some sort of universal or overall idea to take care of these off-site improvements as we come up with them. But we do have a street that has water, sewer, fully paved, 21 feet of pavement, and we're just asking to be able to maintain it in that condition. Let the drainage work how the drainage is working right now. And if you have any questions, I'll be available to answer them. Thank you.
All right, thank you. That'll close our public comment, and we'll go on to ordinances, starting with item 27, and we'll call on our Legal Finance Chair, Laura Armstrong.
I have to abstain from number 27.
It's okay.
I can still,
That's
okay.
all right.
All right. First reading of ordinance 6275, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers Incorporated for Dr. Dale Anderson for a rezoning from light industrial district, to office commercial district for property generally described as being located at 1622 and 1636 Concourse Court. Recommendation is to deny, and I need to abstain.
Okay. Are there any comments on 27? I don't see any. So we'll go to Jason Solomon.
Mr. Mayor, at the request of Vicki Fisher, she asked that we move this item in conjunction with item 37 since they do go together. And so that would be my motion is to move this, I suppose right before 37 then. Is that correct, Vicki?
Mayor?
Okay, so we want to amend this agenda now to go 27 to be right before 37, correct?
That would be my request, Mayor.
It's okay with me. It's okay with the council?
That's my motion.
Okay, sounds good.
If I can get a second.
Second. And anyone against this? All right, motion passes then. Okay, so then we're going to go back, they're going to go on to item 28. Go ahead.
Okay. And item number 28, first reading of ordinance number 6276, an ordinance to amend sections of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to infested trees and storage of wood. Recommendation is to approve.
Second.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Armstrong, second by Scott. You want to speak?
Yes, please.
We'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a question concerning this amendment change. If you don't mind, can I start with Mr. Nyberg?
Absolutely.
Thank you. Wade, who in your office actually worked on drafting this?
I believe it was Kinsley Grote.
Okay. So I don't know if you can answer this question based on this, but I noticed that right at the bottom of this, it says something to the effect, and it was crossed off as far as the storage of wood, and I would assume for uses of, supplemental heat in the wintertime or backyard fire pits or whatever. But it said wood used to be able to be stored as long as it was debarked, but that's being removed. What's the theory behind removing the storage of wood?
I don't know the answer to that.
Okay.
Jeff might.
Jeff
shed
Bigler,
some
may I ask Jeff Bigler?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Hi, Jeff.
Hi. I did get your question, and that section was originally intended to prohibit the storage of elm wood, and this was back when the Dutch elm disease. We didn't want to have elm wood stored anywhere. At that time, they thought that elm wood being debarked would be okay to be stored. However, we're changing that to include all insect infested or all infested wood that's identified in the ordinance. So that includes anything that's got a pest or a disease or anything like that. So there will be no storage of wood that is infested or infected with any disease.
Okay, so in here on the attachment,
Yes.
it doesn't specifically, identify the pests or the infestation insects themselves. Are they covered further up? Because are we looking at all insects? I mean, because there's just some natural insects out there.
Actually, that refers to the definition in 123220, which is part of the existing tree ordinance. And in there, it lists any pest, any organism, insect, rodent, fungus, virus, bacteria, or other agent that causes any damage, abnormal growth, or mortality of any tree, shrub, bush, or woody vegetation. So that covers everything in the existing ordinance is what will be prohibited to be stored.
Okay, so in the past, as you've already identified, if a living organism, tree, vegetation, was infested, it was removed. Or, you know, we want it removed so that it doesn't contaminate other living organisms as far as our vegetation.
Correct.
But the wood would have been, like the elm, would have been debarked and could have been used. Now we're saying that it doesn't matter, fungus, whatever infestation, if it's identified, there is no utilization of that wood for a secondary use whatsoever, that it all has to be removed?
It all needs to be disposed of, yes.
Okay. Because it just seems to me that there's already wood on the ground that, you know, a lot of our citizens may be using for a secondary heat source. So I'm a little concerned. What is your method or your thought in how you're going to enforce this or get those existing piles that before, as long as the bark was removed, could have been used for secondary purposes? Are you going to give like a time frame? Are you going to do a public announcement? Are you going to do some PR work to let people know that you are no longer allowed to store wood if it's been identified with any of these infectious organisms?
There will be an educational campaign, yes. Now, all of these changes are being done with the inevitable arrival of the emerald ash borer, which will be coming to a town near you. Unfortunately, it's been identified in the Sioux Falls area, and it's only a matter of time before it reaches the Rapid City area. So we want to make sure that we get the word out to the public regarding this pest and what to do if they encounter it, and what not to do with the wood that's removed as part of the process.
Okay, because my only concern is like I said, if there's existing wood piles out there, is this new infestation critter that's coming, does it invade existing wood piles, or is it primarily only looking at live vegetation to start with?
It is only looking at live vegetation, but even after it's cut, and even if it's cut into firewood portions, the bug can still live in that bark for a while, and therefore can still fly and infest other areas.
Okay. All right. The only reason I'm bringing it up, like I said, is that up in North Rapid, there may be some other areas and, you know, some of the other wards, but I know that a secondary heat source, especially if we're going to have a bad winter and stuff, I've got a lot of people in my neighborhood that have been busy chopping wood, and so I want to make sure that if they need to use that up, that they've get plenty of notification to be able to use that up and clean it up, and aren't penalized because of this ordinance change coming in. So I hope
not our intent.
I hope the city takes some you know, kind of public relations actions here to make sure that the citizens have plenty of forewarning.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I yield.
Mr. Briegler, as long as you're up there, when do we anticipate this bug being on site here?
Well, best guess is they're probably 3 to 5 years. Could be sooner. I don't think it'll be any later than that. It's most likely going to arrive in a batch of firewood that is brought across from the other part of the state out here for a campfire or something like that. So I know that there are statewide campaigns that are beginning to keep all firewood that's cut in the Sioux Falls area and not bring it out here, to buy locally.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Now we'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the discussion. Mr. Briegler, just to clarify another point on your education program process, the identification of the tree that is infested, how does that become aware to the property owner?
Well, the pest will start to, when it infests the ash tree, these are all ash trees that are going to be infested with the emerald ash borer, and you will start to see some dieback in the crown. You will also notice D-shaped holes in the trunk, and that is the larva that's exiting from the bark and before it becomes an adult. So those are the things that people will be looking for, and certainly when this gets closer, people are going to start looking, not people, but the general public as well as all of the people that are in the tree industry will be very focused on this, and I think there will be a lot of education on how to identify the pest.
Essentially, what I was thinking is along that line, so you addressed my second question. It had to do with the public awareness, how a tree is becoming infected, and maybe some people are not totally informed about what is an infested tree. So is it the staff? Is it your staff? Is it the tree service people that are going to be doing the information? So
it will be a combination of those, both of those, yes. The city has an urban forestry board. They've already put together an emerald ash borer management plan for the city, and all of the tree companies are very much aware of the inevitable arrival of the pest.
So once the material, the vegetation is removed, then at that point, further education will be given to the property owners, or how does that work when the wood is removed and then goes to where?
Well, it most likely will go to a landfill area, or if it can be milled into some sort of lumber before it is infested, that's a possibility as well. We in the Parks Department are going to start some ash removals now because we need to start replanting for all those lost trees. So we're going to be starting a little bit of it every year until it's been identified in this area.
Thank you, Mr. Bigler. I yield.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I make a motion to approve. If I get a second to retain the floor. Oh, was there a motion? Oh, well, thank you. Well, thanks for the motion. Well, since I have retained the floor, just real quick, I want to thank you and your staff for bringing this to our attention months ago. It's always good to get ahead of these things before they become an issue, before they're on fire. And so months ago, you brought this to our attention. Of course, the Sioux Falls since then has found a case, and we know that upped the ante a little bit. And we will look forward to more of the mitigation plan in the future. That's not what's on the table today, but I think obviously there's a mitigation plan as far as where to put the wood and all of that. And I think in terms of the PR effort, we'll look for that from your staff. And I'm sure you'll do a good job making sure the public knows all the information they need to know. I yield. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, just echoing Jason Solomon and the fact that I was on the Urban Forestry Committee. There was a lot of work done on this before the ash borer even, surfaced in the news. And just for the advice or for the information of people that might be listening, you had some experience with the elm infestation in another area, and it took out like 300,000 trees in a very short amount of time. Is that correct? Am I remembering that right?
Well, I came from a town north of Detroit. My previous job was there, actually, from Rapid City, but that was kind of ground zero for the emerald ash borer infestation, at least to the point where it is now. We ended up in the city of Troy, Michigan, removing 30,000 ash trees that were city municipal trees, those that were in parks, on municipal grounds, and in the city right-of-way area.
Yeah, so you've had experience with this, and we leave it in very capable hands. And as long as everybody pays attention, I think that we'll get out ahead of this like you've planned and be able to mitigate the amount of damage done to our trees. So thank you very much for your work.
Okay, we have a motion and a second for approval of item 28. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 29, please.
Number 29, first reading of ordinance number 6281, an ordinance regarding FY fiscal year, right? Okay. 2019 appropriation ordinance. Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a second by Amanda Scott. And go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a little bit of a clarification. May I direct a question to Pauline Sumption, please?
Yes, please.
Pauline, as you know, there's some discussion taking place at the last city council meeting, and some of this direction sending back to the mayor for reconsideration of a few items. Can you explain a little bit how this process is working, since we're doing a first reading, but we're not seeing this, the modifications set forward in the motion that was made last Wednesday?
Sure. I advised on Tuesday that being the first reading was already on the legal and finance agenda on Wednesday as the mayor presented it, that there would be no possible way that he can come back with his $203,000 and some odd dollars worth of cuts in that short of time frame. So told you guys at that time that what you would see for first reading was based on the mayor's proposed budget, and that he would bring forth his recommended changes for the second reading, which will go to legal and finance next week and council on the 17th of September.
Thank you. I think we just needed a little bit clearer understanding how this process is working, and the steps that are being taken towards this, shall I say, the second reading of this ordinance. And so a lot of moving parts are going to be taking place in between now and the second reading. So just want to make sure everybody is understanding of how that process works, not just us on the council, but for the citizens as well, so they're aware of what's to take place. Stay tuned. Thank you. I'll yield.
Okay, thank you. And just as an information item, I'll have a memo to the council in a day or two with the recommended, hopefully last round of reductions for your consideration. Okay, we're on item 29, and I believe we had a motion and a second. All in favor of approval, say aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Okay, now on to Public Works Committee items, starting with item 30. We'll go to Darla Drew, our Public Works Committee Chair.
Thank you, Mayor. This item has been withdrawn at the request of the appellant. Do I still read it in?
Just acknowledge the...
Okay. I would just like to acknowledge the withdrawal of the application request, or the appeal request, excuse me.
Second by Laurenti. Sounds good. All in favor of acknowledgement, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. No. But you can. John Roberts wants to abstain from item number 30, even though it didn't occur. Okay. Next item, please.
Item 31. Let's see. Appeal of denied exception request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. on behalf of BH Capital LLC to waive the requirement to install 24 feet of pavement width and curb and gutter in Valley Drive. Recommendation to is approve. A move to approve.
Okay, motion and a second then by John Roberts. So the motion was to approve the exception.
Yes.
Correct.
Approve the exception.
And that's a second. Okay. We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. As everyone knows, that I'm probably going to newsflash for everyone. This one here is not comfortable for me for approving this, so I'm going to be opposing the recommendation to allow the exception. First and primarily for the objection that has to do with the cost of construction on this road. And if we don't get it in now with the construction in the future, it's going to be very, very expensive. And as everyone knows now, that the construction fees are probably going to be cheaper now than they will be in the future. Who knows when this road is going to get improved, and that ultimately is going to wind up with the taxpayers, and in my opinion, at this stage, it will be coming out of the CIP. And that's one of the reasons why I strongly object to the exception being approved, because the taxpayer is going to be picking this all up. And there's more rationale behind that, but I don't want to take up everybody's time in understanding all that. Thank you.
Okay, there's a motion and a second on the floor to approve the exception. And Amanda Scott has got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to follow up on Alderman Nordstrom's comments. I too echo a lot of times with Alderman Nordstrom. I understand that a lot of times, and especially with past history repeats itself, that if we give an exception,
that chances are it's going to fall on the burden of all the taxpayers. But I also know that the opinion, or at least what I am observing, is it seems like the opinion of the city councils the city council is changing. I am in favor of this one, primarily, Alderman Nordstrom, from what you said. I can approve this exception because we don't know when this road is going to be constructed. And I am really looking for the city council in the future, so property owners be forewarned, especially developers, especially on this, that instead of having this road when it does become improved or the necessity to be improved, I would really like to see, especially a project like this, have a special assessment assigned to the property owner at the time, so then that way the entire burden does not fall back on the taxpayers. So as it sits today, since this street is, we don't know when it's going to be constructed, normally I would be in support of for the very reasons you've said, but on this one, I can support the exception being upheld. So thank you, Mayor.
John Roberts.
Thank you very much. And, you know, I would like to get into that discussion about doing assessments on these, because one of the issues that I've had for all the years that I've been on the council so far is when a developer comes in and puts a road in, unless he owns all the property on both sides of the road, he's putting in improvements for the people across the road from him. And that is not only unfair, but I think that the state of South Dakota would probably say it was illegal if somebody ever took it to court. And I think we're putting ourselves in a big risk of liability by we've been doing that for years, or trying to do that for years. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't work. But, you know, years ago, we did the warp, and you know, a lot of times nothing would ever come by it. You know, eventually, yeah, the taxpayers would pay for it, or somebody would pay for it, or the road just wouldn't be upgraded, and we'd wait, you know, for another developer to come in and try to take advantage of them. So, you know, I do think that the discussion for doing assessments on these projects is a fantastic conversation that we should have, because somehow we've got to work out how we can be fair for everybody. And I think that if we can find that balance, I think that we can really spur growth in Rapid City. I think one of the things that's really held us back with a lot of developers is the fact that they're putting in all this infrastructure, and the first one there is the one that gets hit the hardest. So if you're the first one that's doing it and putting the road in and putting the water and putting the sewer in, you're the one that's taking a lot of that, not only risk, but you're also investing more than your neighbor is. So somehow we need to find a way to become fairer to people on this. Thank you.
And back to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I apologize for going out on this rabbit hole, but I just want to remind the council that we just saw a master plan coming up on this project, and so it's not that far in the distant future. So if we want to have a conversation about making some kind of a special assessments, I'm open to that. But again, it still ultimately goes back to the taxpayers, who's going to wind up paying the bill. And we can have that argument, who's paying now and who's paying later, but just keep in mind that construction costs are cheaper now than they will be in the future. I'll yield.
Okay, we have a Jason Solomon on the floor.
We have a Jason Solomon. Thank you. We've had this discussion with Creek Drive, and John Roberts is correct. I mean, we got to look at something that's fair, and I think that's one thing that we've run across. And I believe the staff wants that too, and they've agreed to work with builders or developers in the community in order to try to figure that out, and assessment might be a big part of that. At the end of the day, when I see that master plan in that area, I get excited about that, you know, and I want to see that happen, because I think the revenue that'll generate and the growth and beautification and the whole thing, that's what that's about. But at the end of the day, as we talk about these improvements and about providing these exceptions, we have to weigh the pros and the cons, and I think the pros of this particular development outweigh the cons, but I think we still have a bigger issue that we're leaving on the table that need further discussion, and how do we deal with these issues? Because you're right, we've seen it time and time again. It's just not fair that folks on the other side, and someone, you know, spends all this money to develop a road and the other person gets to reap the benefits. So I think as we figure out that solution, or as staff and developers, the entire community kind of come together around that, I lean towards moving forward on these projects so we can actually see them happen. So I'll be supporting this exception tonight. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? And we have a motion on the floor for approval of the exception. All in favor of item number 31, correct?
Correct.
All in favor of item 31, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. Motion passes with 1 no. Okay, and Alderwoman Drew, would you go ahead with the Community Planning and Development Services item number 32, please?
Thank you. Item 32, a request by Ferber Engineering Company for Peatling and Sons for a preliminary subdivision plan for proposed Lot 1 of Clare subdivision, generally described as being located 700 feet northwest of the eastern terminus of Hidden Valley Road. The recommendation to is approved with stipulations. I move to approve.
Second.
Second by Lisa Modrick. Go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want it to be noted that I'll be abstaining from this item.
Duly noted. Okay, we have a motion for approval of item 32. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes with Amanda Scott abstaining. Okay, takes us down to public hearing items, items 33 through 37, and we'll open public comment on those items. And so on item 34 and 37, we have Chuck Henry.
Okay, approved. I said about the family deal. This is the Children's Museum, the Black Hills, that's doing this with liquor. That's not a good example for the kids. And again, on 37, I'm for that. We're trying to sell this building, and hopefully we'll get it sold and get some revenue into the Black Hills Works and help out church. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And also don't forget on item 37, we have Janelle Fink standing by for questions. Okay. Okay, on to consent public hearing items 33 through 37. Would the council like to remove any of these items or vote for all of them? Can we have a motion? Okay.
So yeah, that was incorrectly written.
Okay, how about 33 and 34? Anybody want to vote on those, on consent? Hey, Richie Nordstrom with the motion and John Roberts for a second. Boy, that was difficult. All in favor of approving 33 and 34, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now, non-consent public hearing items 35 through 37. Item number 35. Second reading, ordinance 6273, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by Brandon Powles of Copper Canyon Homes for a rezoning from general commercial district to medium density residential district for property generally described as being located at 816.5 St. James Street, and the committee recommendation was for approval.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drew, second by Roberts. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item number 36. Approve Resolution 2018-056, a request by FMG Engineering for Lavris? Oh, pardon me?
Yavris.
LLC for a vacation of right-of-way property, more generally described as being located in the northern terminus of 4th Street. Committee recommendation is for approval. Motion to approve by Solomon, second by Drew. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now going back to item 27, That will be first reading ordinance 6275, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Dr. Dale Anderson for rezoning from light industrial district to office commercial district for property generally described as being located at 1622 and 1636 Concourse Court. Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I have a question for Dr. Anderson, please.
Yes, go ahead.
Thank you, Dr. Anderson. When you were talking about this earlier, you described the students as being unique, and very little in this world is unique. So why don't you tell me why these students are considered unique students?
Well, I think they're unique because when I found out that the student body is 2/3 of them are not even members of our church. They were so excited about the school that they convinced other friends of theirs to come and join the school. And so they filled the school to capacity, and there's a waiting list of students wanting to come. So I didn't want to allow that opportunity to lapse without helping them out. And that's why I was looking for a piece of property where our school could expand, we could get new classrooms and a gymnasium for the kids to play in the wintertime. And I did find that building with the Black Hills Works organization, and that's why I sought to purchase it. And I thought it would be an easy deal, and I'm finding out that it's not because of the conditional use permit.
Very little is at the city level.
Yes.
So this is a faith-based school?
Yes.
And also there's a fee to attend, I would assume?
Yes, there is.
And the students that are clamoring to go here, are they generally in the area? Is that why they find this school so appealing?
The school student body comes from all over the city, actually. They're I shouldn't say bused there. They're brought by their parents in carpooling, yes.
All right, that's the end of my questions. Thank you. I yield.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I've had the opportunity to tour the facility as well as to do walkabout around the area where the other businesses are at. One of the questions that was stated to us by a former council member that's on Planning Commission was that we need to protect these zoning areas and not let encroachment happen. However, as the city's growing, things move and they change, and we've got some new industrial areas that are developing that are out of this frontage, and this frontage has got the right change going. It's the right thing to do. And then repurposing. We don't want to have a lot of empty buildings. We want to be able to repurpose these buildings and let them provide what they can do for, in this case, be able to move from Black Hills Works into a school environment, a safe environment. And that whole street, it's a dead-end street. It doesn't have traffic, it doesn't have trucks, it doesn't have what we think of when we're envisioning industry. It just didn't develop along that frontage in that way. So this is a perfect opportunity to allow this exchange to happen, purpose for purpose, and benefit the families and the children and the needs of our community in order to enhance our educational process along with a safe area that is growing and developing in that direction. It's far enough away from industry. I think that this is the right move to do. It's a good zoning change. It's solid. Thank you. I support it.
John Roberts.
Thank you very much. First, I want to make a motion to approve this, and then I want to hold the floor.
Okay, a motion by Roberts to approve and second by Laurenti. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I have to agree with Alderwoman Modrick that I think this is a good change in zoning. I would personally have an issue with this if this was in the middle of that subdivision and we were putting a piece of property right, we were rezoning a piece of property right in the middle of that subdivision. But because it lays on the outside, and this would be a buffer to the light industrial, I think it's a perfect fit. I really think it is. And you know, when you look at how this area is growing out there and what's going to come in across the road, which is more than likely going to be general commercial, So, you know, really, if you look at general commercial, on the other side, office commercial, and, you know, it would be nice to see that frontage change a little bit more and become more, you know, either office commercial or general commercial, because that's what you want on those high traffic frontage roads. You don't want light industrial right on your high traffic frontage road, because traffic in real estate equals price, and you know, you need that for your general commercial. So, you know, I support this because of the location. I support this because neighbors in the neighborhood support it. You know, building owners in the neighborhood support it. I think that this is a good fit for that neighborhood out there. I think it's a good fit for the school, and I think that this will be the perfect property for Mr. Anderson, that's been looking for something like this for a while now. And I think it's a wonderful school to go, that the works can get rid of this building and not be sitting on it for years vacant. You know, that's like Councilwoman Modrick said, it's a good repurpose of this building with a good, you know, a good fit. There's not going to be a lot of traffic there. There's not going to be, you know, I mean, you're going from, at max, maybe someday there'll be 100 students there, if, you know, God willing, there will be. But even if there is, that'd be 20 less people that are in there right now. So, you know, I think it's a great fit. I support it 100%, and I hope that the rest of the council will. So thank you.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When you approach decisions like this, I think one of the biggest questions we ask ourselves is, you know, why is this there in the first place? I actually think we have good folks in our planning and zoning, Vicki being among them, and they work within the parameters that they're given, and I think that is a good thing. However, when I look at the why this is there, good zoning can make good neighbors. John Roberts hit it right on the head. If it was creating a donut effect, it's a whole different story. This is a situation where the neighbors are happy, and when I look at how it's being used currently and historically, really, all these years by Black Hills Works and what they've done there with the training facilities and the classrooms and, you know, busing coming in and out, and really being a great neighbor to the neighbors around there, and the fact that there's a daycare right across the parking lot. And not only that, it's proximity to some other workplaces that might take advantage of having an educational facility there. I think it's only going to lift the neighborhood. It's a promotion of this neighborhood, and this area has been developed for quite a while, and it's always good to kind of see new blood and new life get in there. Obviously, it's going to be very big for Black Hills Works to be able to move on to what's next for them, but the journey that they're ending is a new beginning for the church and the school that will be here. And so I do support this because I believe it's reasonable. It's reasonable to say on the edge of this area we can provide this service and be good neighbors. I believe they will be good neighbors. We have support from the neighborhood. We have historical evidence that this kind of service works there. So the why we would not have it is because it would hinder the light industrial or other works that are going on there. But in fact, the opposite has happened, to where Black Hills Works has been a terrific neighbor, even with all the transportation in and out. That opened the door to say, you know what, we would love to have something comparable, probably even slightly less in terms of number of impact and the number of people. And so because it's reasonable, because it's going to make that area even better. I know we talking neighborhoods are just residential, but they're not just residential. All areas of town are neighborhoods. Bet you're going to be a really good neighbor and create a great home. And as that area flourishes, you know, we can see having a school right there. I think that it's kind of cool. And the way they have it planned, they're very thoughtful, not reckless. Really, I don't have very many concerns, except you know, if it was going to be a safety issue. And in this situation, that's not what I see. So I'm happy to support this reasonable option. I hope the rest of the council does as well. Sounds like we might. But at the same time, I do want to make sure that we do give credit to our staff. They're not trying to always be the bad guys. They're trying to do their job. And it's our job to make those exceptions. And so that's what I'm approving tonight. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. When I streamed the Planning Commission meeting on this, and I was listening to the commissioners debate this issue, and, you know, staff had provided excellent reports concerning our future use and what this is current zoning. But then you have to take a look at, and the applicant and also the current residents of that area were describing the long history that they've had, that they've been able to utilize that property to much. And when you stop and think about the way they were describing it, I was trying to sit there and think, how does that fit with the current applicant wanting to put a church and a school on that property? And then looking at the surrounding property, because it is currently zoned light industrial, that's the problem I was having with it. So I was trying to look at it from different viewpoints, and I had some emails and, you know, other information, as we all did, that was provided. And so I was sifting through all the information. And one of the things that came up in my mind is I tried to put myself, because one of the planning commissioners, who was a past city council member, brought up that, you know, we're trying to carve out light industrial area and maintain it for future use. So I put another spin on it when my thinking, and I'm thinking, okay, if this gets granted as an exception by the city council, which we can do, in looking at the light industrial, the applicant could apply for a special use permit, if I'm correct, for a church in a light industrial, and that would be approved. So the issue is that it's also got a faith-based school, a parochial school, that they want to be able to operate as well. And the current use of the building really lends itself to that training or that educational center. So it's like this property is already designed for the purpose in which they want to move in. Here's the problem I'm having, and I don't mind supporting this, but I kind of want to go on record that if this is approved by the city council, you move in, you're rezoned. The property around you is not. So any light industrial that wants to move in next to you, you don't get a say. You don't get a say. If they want to do ammunition manufacturing, if they want to do any other type of light industrial that is allowed in that industrial park, you're moving in and you've got your little pie pieced out, and it's a perfect building, it sounds like, for everybody that's talked about it, for you. But you have to realize that over time, just like this parcel, over time became the building that you're looking for. It's the answer to your prayer. You have to realize that any other property around you that is developed and is zoned light industrial, you don't get a say in it. They get to do that. I mean, you can come in here, because we've had it before, you come before city council saying, that's just not right, we have kids here. That's not going to hold water, because it is zoned light industrial. So I'm looking at you, and as long as you know that with your eyes opened, I can support this, because the building is currently designed where it looks like it would fit your needs. But I do want to go on record. You've got to accept the neighbors that move in, no matter what their type of business is. So, thank you, Mayor.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm kind of leaning in that same direction of supporting the school, but as I told all the folks that emailed me or made a conversation with me in face-to-face or over the phone or whatever, I said I wanted to hear also what staff had for concerns, because I do have some reservations, and I think Alderwoman Scott expressed a few of them. And so, Mayor, if I may call upon, tonight it's Vicki Fisher, so if I may call upon her to give us some rationale. If I may?
Certainly.
The question is there any reservation? I've got some reservations, but I wanted to hear from what staff was saying, and I got a little bit of information from Planning Commission, but Can you expound upon what the concerns are from the Planning Commission and then also from the staff's perspective? Because I want to give you the chance to give us some information, because we've not heard, at least from the council perspective, we've not heard from the staff what the concerns are.
Mr. Mayor?
Please.
Thank you. So you're right. First, speaking to the Planning Commission conversation that was held at the meeting, Commissioner Karen Bowman used to sit on City Council several years ago, and she was on council back in the day when there was a group bringing forward this great idea about creating this industrial park to entice these industrial uses to show interest in our city and to come to our city and create these, in many instances, higher paying positions. And as a result of that, 200 acres were set aside and they were identified as the Rushmore Regional Industrial Park. Karen remembers the hard work that was to create that industrial park. We have been very successful in diligently holding true to the boundaries of that park and keeping it light industrial. Vince Vidal also noted at Planning Commission that he worked in this area for several years and that there are many components of the uses that were cited by the applicant's consultant that, even though they appeared somewhat in office commercial nature, that they also had the ability to have that industrial component that included trucks and warehouse type uses that necessarily didn't fit with this type of use. From staff's perspective, you have charged us with reviewing the comprehensive plan. One of the major components of our comprehensive plan is to secure and preserve nodes of industrial areas in our community. This is one of the more predominant industrial areas that we have. We saw something similar happen along North Plaza Drive when someone came in and wanted to rezone on the outskirts something medium density residential, and as a result, we have a very large apartment development in that area, and then started coming the calls of concern from the industrial users that said, what do we do with all of these people with children walking these streets? It's hazardous for our truck traffic, etc. In this case, staff had the opportunity to review the property with the applicant, and there is such support from all of us with what the church is trying to do and the outreach program that they provide this community with the services that they bring not only within their church but outside. And I'm here to tell you, Black Hills Works has won us over years ago. It is unfortunate that their building is at this location in the core of this industrial development. I will remind you that the item before you tonight is to rezone to office commercial. There is a following item that's to allow a church and a school as conditional uses within the office commercial. If this site is zoned office commercial, with the items before you today, at any time they could come in for a building permit for any use within office commercial. And that apartment building that we spoke about over on North Plaza could happen on this property too. Now granted, it's 2.54 acres, so the number of units would be somewhat reduced. Our other concern is this spot zoning, and that's what we have to call it. It would lend itself to the next guy coming in saying, I've got an alternate use. I so appreciate the comment that what's there today want to be good neighbors with this, but perhaps what's there tomorrow won't be. And so it's our job to ensure the safety and integrity of not only the ordinance, but the users today and the potential users of those adjacent properties tomorrow. And based on that, staff could not get behind this application as much as we support what they're trying to do.
Thank you, Mayor. I see my time's up. Thank you.
And John Roberts.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. And I will say that, you know, this was a discussion they had. I was at Planning Commission that day. And if this is rezoned as office commercial, it will never become apartments on 2.5 acres because the property is too valuable to become apartments. And there's a few brokers in here that I could probably ask that question to, like Chris, or there's a new one in there that used to be a council member. Oh, you're not a broker yet. You're just an agent. Just kidding. Janelle, do you have something that you'd like to say?
If I were able to use the overhead. I wanted to just make one comment, and it was an item that I didn't really have the chance to address in Planning Commission either, is that there's been a lot of discussion about we have to preserve this industrial park. And I apologize, I think that Mr. Trelaw zoomed this in for me, and let's see. Oh, there we go. Now I can make it work. Okay. The heavy dark line represents the Rushmore Regional Industrial Park. This small segment here is the property that we're looking at rezoning. There's already generally commercially zoned property that's taken place on the perimeter of this park. And I think as some of you mentioned, Councilman Roberts in particular, there's already commercial zoning on either side of Elkvale through here. We're not doing something that's in the center of this park. This is in the perimeter. If you visited the site, it has its own characteristic. And yes, we agree and understand that the neighborhood is still light industrial, but we also see that there's been a daycare located in this area since Rushmore Regional Industrial Park was conceived, and it's been operating safely and successfully, as has Black Hills Works for over 30 years. So there's no reason to believe that the school can't operate safely and successfully in harmony with the other uses in this area and not intrude upon the balance of the park that is zoned light industrial. Thank you.
Thank you, Janelle. And I don't have any more questions, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, Steve Laurenti.
I didn't think I could let this item go without commenting, so I just wanted to join the popular crowd, but kidding. That area that was on the left there in the yellow, that's where I live. So I just wanted to quickly say thanks to the Works group for being there, being great neighbors to my neighborhood. I consider that park, I used to work in that park as well for many years, and I just want to hopefully welcome our new neighbors to the Copper Lane Court and that whole area as well. I yield.
Okay, on item 27, we have a motion to approve. I get it. All in favor of approval of item 27, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion passes with Laura Armstrong abstaining. Now on to item 37. An appeal of Planning Commission's decision on a request by Fisk Land Surveying and Consulting Engineers for Dr. Dale Anderson for a conditional use permit to allow a church and an elementary middle school in the Office Commercial District for property generally described as being located at 1622 and 1636 Concourse Court. And committee recommendation was to appeal a Planning Commission's decision to approve a conditional use permit to allow a church and deny a permit to allow a middle school. We'll go to Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. If I make a motion to, and retain the floor, is to approve this item.
Okay, second by Steve Laurenti. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. Janelle, can you answer a question for me? I'm looking at, in our summary, we've got an attachment called a project report, and basically the image is got a panhandle on it, if you will, and it extends over into the parking lot of the adjacent. Oops, come on, computer. It extends over into the adjacent parking lot. Can you briefly describe what that means to the neighbors in that area?
The panhandle is Concourse Court, or portions of Concourse Court, and I cannot answer you as to why exactly they configured that. That particular shape or platting took place years and years ago. It's just looks like the state of Oklahoma is what it looks like.
Yes,
a little
it
bit.
does.
Yes, it does. And it just connects out to Concourse Drive. It's a part of the access into the park, and for whatever reason, they attached it to this particular lot. So your guess is as good as mine, but right now it serves as access for Concourse Court.
Thank you. And then the parking lot adjacent to the property on the north side, that little cube that's on the north side up there, I assume that's the same answer for that area as well?
Yes, that area that serves as parking goes with the building and will serve as parking for the church and the school as well.
And if I recall correctly, there's a daycare center located very close to this cubed area.
Correct. It's north of the panhandle of Oklahoma and south of the parking lot, so it's immediately adjacent.
Well described. And again, I just wanted to make sure everybody understands that part of my conversation with you folks, and the ones that emailed me or had some kind of communication with me, is that I wanted to hear from staff on this, and I don't know if there's any redundancy or repeat that the staff wants to make, but I just wanted to give the staff an opportunity to chime in on this topic. So if I may direct a question to Vicki Fisher, please.
Please.
Ms. Fisher, is there any additional information that you would like to provide on this item that's different from the previous item?
Yes, I would. So if it's
Okay.
desire of the city council to approve this application, I would propose the hip pocket stipulation that the conditional use permit to allow a church and a school to be located on the property as per the applicant's operational plan, that any change in use or expansion of use requires a major amendment to the conditional use permit. And I think that would, if it's with the applicant's acknowledgement, I think that would get us to where the comments have been this evening about the specific plan before you and ensuring that no other building permit could get approved without coming back before some public hearing.
So Mayor, if that's a request from staff to make that, is it, and do I understand that's part of your request for a motion then on that?
I don't think I can actually
We have
request
a
a motion.
motion. We have a motion now to
I understand,
approve.
but
We could
but I
take
just wanted to, yes,
we could take a substitute motion to approve on all of the conditions
So moved.
that came from Vicki
okay,
Fisher.
I was going to say I can't do that, so, okay.
Okay, motion by Amanda Scott to make that motion. Is there a second? Jason Solomon? Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Laura abstained.
Oh, Laura Armstrong abstained. Okay, the bill list, item 38. We'll go to Pauline Sumption, City Finance Officer.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There are no additions to the bill list, so the total is that which is attached at $6,908,736.04.
Motion approved by Laurenti and a second by Solomon. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn and a second. All in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. We're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.